Both Bayo and Tola lay awake in their separate homes, their hearts beating in sync with the unspoken connection between them. But while Bayo was filled with hope and curiosity, Tola battled the darker forces within her, knowing that her mission left little room for love. It was late into the night, the kind of darkness where the only sounds were the occasional hum of a distant generator and the rhythmic chirp of crickets. Tade was fast asleep, sprawled out on the side of the bed, his breathing deep and steady. His wife Oluchi lay beside him, her head buried in her pillow, savoring the rare tranquility of the night. Suddenly, Tade's phone rang. Cutting through the silence, Oluchi stared, her brow furrowing as she slowly woke up, squinting against the brightness of the phone screen. The name flashing on the caller ID caught her attention immediately. Shalewa. Her heart skipped a beat. Shalewa, she muttered to herself. Blinking the sleep out of her eyes, she nudged Tade, who grumbled and rolled over, trying to ignore the interruption. Who is Shalewa? Oluchi asked, her voice low but filled with suspicion. She sat up, her eyes now wide open, staring at Tade as he grudgingly reached for the phone. Tade blinked at the screen, still half asleep. Babe, it's not what you think, he murmured, wiping a hand over his face. She's Bode's girl. Oluchi narrowed her eyes, crossing her arms. So who exactly is Bode's girl? Is she a new toy now? Tade sighed, his mind struggling to catch up with the situation. No, Oluchi, calm down, he said, trying to soothe her. He sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes. She's just Bode's girlfriend, you know. You know Bode, right? She's been around, you've seen her before. Oluchi eyed him, suspicion slowly melting away into a mute irritation. Oh, she muttered, leaning back against the headboard, but keeping her gaze fixed on him. Okay, but why is she calling you in the middle of the night? Tade, now a little more awake, raised an eyebrow and shrugged. Before answering the call, hello, he said cautiously. Almost instantly, a frantic voice came through the speaker, her voice barely coherent between the sobs. Tade, I don't know what to do. I don't know who else to call. Shalewa, calm down, Tade interrupted, his tone firm but concerned. What's going on? What happened? Oluchi, still watching closely, sat up straighter. As she noticed the tension in Tade's voice, something wasn't right. She leaned closer, trying to catch more of the conversation. Through Shalewa's sobs, her words began to spill out in a rush. It's Bode. He hasn't been home since 2 days now. Since you guys went out for boys' night, I called him, messaged him, but nothing. Tade felt his chest tighten. He exchanged a glance with Oluchi, who was now listening intently, concern slowly replacing her earlier irritation. Wait, what do you mean Bode hasn't been home? Tade asked, his voice lowering. That's not possible. He was with me that night, but 2 days? Are you sure? Shalewa's voice cracked on the other end. Yes, I'm sure. He left that night, and I haven't seen him since. I've been calling him, and it's just ringing. No response. I'm so scared, Tade. Tade clenched his jaw, glancing at Oluchi, who was now sitting fully upright, her expression shifting from suspicion to shared concern. Okay, Shalewa, listen, Tade said, his voice steadying. I'm going to call him right now. Just stay calm, alright? I don't know what to do, Shalewa cried, her voice trembling. I don't want to believe something happened to him, but this isn't like him, Tade. He has never done something like this before. Tade's mind raised and Oluchi's hand gently rubbed his arm, silently offering her support. He gave her a small nod before turning back to the phone. I'll call you back, Shalewa, I said softly. Let me find out what is going on. We'll figure this out together, okay? As Tade hung up, he ran a hand through his hair, his heart pounding in his chest. He stared at his phone for a moment, his mind replaying the last time he had seen Bode. It had been a fun, carefree night, nothing out of the ordinary. But now, Oluchi's soft voice broke through his thoughts. What's going on, Tade? Is Bode missing? He exhaled slowly, his shoulders heavy with worry. It looks like it. Shalewa says he hasn't been home since that night we went out. She's really scared. Oluchi's eyes widened. That's serious. Do you think something could have happened to him? I don't know, Tade said, shaking his head. I'm going to call him now. See if I can reach him. He dialed Bode's number. The call immediately went to voicemail. Bode, it's Tade. Call me back as soon as you get this man. Everyone's worried about you. Tade hung up and let out a frustrated sigh, his hand falling into his lap. Nothing. Oluchi reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. We'll find him. Maybe he just needs some space, but we'll figure it out together. Tade nodded, though the unease in his chest refused to settle. Something didn't feel right. Tade leaned back in his chair, swelling the last of his drink as he spoke, his voice a mixture of frustration and uncertainty. Guy, I've reached out to all Bode's girlfriends. None of them have seen him, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. The bar was dimly lit, with the low hum of music filling the air, but Tade's mind was miles away, thinking about his missing friend. Kunle, sitting across from him, chuckled and took a sip of his beer. Unfazed, guy relaxed. Bode is probably somewhere with that body from the other night and just doesn't want to be disturbed. Kunle said casually, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. It's not like it's the first time Bode has gone MIA with a woman. Tade paused, considering Kunle's words. As much as he wanted to believe that Bode was off on one of his usual escapades, something about this time felt different. Still, he nodded, trying to push his worry aside. True, he said, clinking his glass against Kunle's with a forced smile. They laughed, but Tade's mind couldn't fully relax. Later that night, Bayo tossed and turned in his sleep. His brow damp with sweat as his mind was plagued by a recurring nightmare. In the dream, he saw a man, someone familiar, but whose face he couldn't quite place, running frantically. The man's eyes were wide with fear as he fled from something massive, something terrifying. Suddenly, the ground shook and Bayo saw it, a huge slithering snake, its black scales glittering under a dark sky. The man ran as fast as he could, but the snake was faster, closing the gap between them. Just as the snake fangs were about to sink into the man's back, Bayo jolted awake. His heart racing, his hands trembling. He sat up in bed, breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling as he tried to shake off the lingering fear from the nightmare. His room was quiet, but the airy feeling from the dream clung to him, refusing to let go. As the night deepened, Tade and Kule finished their drinks and decided to call it the night. I'll catch you later, man, Kule said, slapping Tade on the back. Before heading to his car, Tade watched him drive off, then got into his own car. The streets almost deserted at this hour. The sky above was heavy, the air thick with the promise of rain. As Tade drove, he felt a familiar sensation, a strange itching on the scar on his face. It was a deep nagging itch, like the wound had just been inflicted again. It always happened on rainy nights, a sensation he couldn't explain. His fingers brushed over the scar absent-mindedly. It rained tonight, he muttered under his breath, glancing up at the darkened clouds. I better hurry home. Just as he was about to accelerate, a flicker of movement on the side of the road caught his eye. Tade squinted through the windshield. His curiosity piqued. There, under the faint glow of a street lamp, was a woman, a slender figure, drenched from head to toe, using her hands to shield herself from the rain. Her dress, which had been sleek and fitting, was now soaked, clinging to her curves like a second skin. Tade licked his lips, leaning forward in the seat for a better look. Tasty, murmured to himself, a slight grin spreading across his face. He slowed down and rolled down the window as he pulled up beside her. Hello, beautiful, he called out smoothly, his voice drooping with charm. What are you doing out here in the rain at this time of night? The woman turned towards him, and Tade noticed that her face was streaked with tears, her lower lip trembling as she extended her legs slightly, revealing a bruised nail. I fell off an Okada, she said, her voice shaky. The man just drove off without even checking if I was okay. Tade's first concern kicked in immediately. Oh my God, he said, quickly stepping out of the car. That's terrible. Are you hurt badly? He placed a hand around her petite waist, as if to support her, though he couldn't help but feel the warmth of her body through the thin, wet fabric. I think I can walk, she said softly, leaning into him for support. But my knee hurts. Don't worry, Tade said, helping her into the passenger seat of his car. I'll take care of you. As they drove, the woman who introduced herself as Annie explained how she had recently moved to the city to pursue a modeling career. It'd been so hard, she said, her voice still trembling slightly from the shock. I don't know anyone here, and now I've lost all my money to that Okada man who robbed me after the accident. Tade's mind was already racing with romantic thoughts as he listened to her, a beautiful, vulnerable girl in distress. He couldn't have asked for a better situation. Don't worry, Annie, he said, flashing her his reassuring smile. I'll make sure you're safe. Let's get you to an hotel so you can rest. I'll check up on you tomorrow evening. I will make sure they get you new clothes. He dropped her off at a nearby hotel. Watching as she limped towards the entrance, he made sure the receptionist was kind to her, promising Annie he would return. Take care, Annie, Tade said, giving her a little wink before heading back to his car. As he drove home, his mind buzzed with images of Annie, the way her dress had clung to her, a grateful smile. He couldn't wait to see her again. Pulling out his phone, he quickly shot a message to Kunle. Guy, you won't believe the hottie I just met, he typed. grinning to himself. Tolani, back in our hotel room, stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face rippled momentarily, shifting from the soft, innocent features she had worn earlier to the hardened, scarred visage she knew all too well, her true self. She chuckled softly, slipping off her wet dress and letting her hair fall over her shoulders. As she dried it, the cold hair from the hotel hair conditioner brushed against her bare skin. But she barely noticed. All she could think of was Tade's foolish grin, his lost-filled eyes, and how easily he had fallen into her trap. That fool, she muttered, shaking her head, recalling how desperate he had been to impress her. His attempts to play hero, almost laughable. She had counted on it. Men like Tade were predictable, pathetic. The scar she had given him years ago, when he had ruined her life, had become her guiding light. She had traced him and his friends, though she was disappointed at Bayo. The other man she sought was not there. He was missing, but not for long. One step at a time, her lips curled into a wicked smile. Tade was the target, and he wouldn't know what hit him until it was far too late. Tolani moved to the window, her rope trailing behind her, and peering out at the dimly lit city below. Revenge is sweet, she whispered, and I'm going to savor every second of it. At Vivian's school, Bayo sat in his car for a moment, watching the morning hustle of children arriving. His daughter Vivian was busy tugging at her backpack, preparing to hop out. His eyes, however, were glued to someone else, Tola, the teacher standing at the entrance welcoming the students with a smile that lit up the entire street. Today, she had her hair styled in two playful ponytails, and the sight made Bayo chuckle. Dad, you like her, don't you? Vivian voice broke through his thoughts, mischievous eyes twinkling at him from the back seat. He blinked, flustered. Like who? Auntie Tola, of course. You were staring, Vivian giggled, a tiny voice filled with all the innocence of childhood. But her curiosity was relentless. No, baby, Bayo argued, shaking his head, though his gaze involuntarily flickered back to Tola. I wasn't staring. Vivian's lips curled into a cheeky grin. If you don't like her, I'll tell her. Bayo laughed. Did she ask if I like her? Without answering, Vivian jumped out of the car and ran straight into Tola's arms. Tola laughed, a warm smile brightening even more as she hugged the little girl. Bayo found himself drawn towards them, almost as if an invisible string was pulling him in Tola's direction. Hi, he said. Once he reached her, his voice surprisingly nervous. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment the sounds of the schoolyard seemed to fade away. Hi, Tola replied, her cheek slightly flushed as she released Vivian. I hope you're having a good morning. Bayo smiled. Much better now, he said, before catching himself. I was wondering if you're free this evening. Maybe we could grab dinner? Tola raised an eyebrow, pretending to think it over, as she glanced at Vivian, who was grinning like she had orchestrated the entire moment. Dinner sounds lovely, Tola said softly, her eyes meeting Bayo once more. I love that. Vivian clapped her hands, dancing in the circle. Yes, Daddy and Aunt Tola are going on a date. Bayo laughed, embarrassed but amused by his daughter's antics. Great, I'll get a babysitter for Vivian. So we can... I don't need a babysitter, Vivian interjected. I'm a big girl, Dad. Bayo chuckled, ruffling her hair. We'll see about that, little miss. Later that evening, Tade knocked on the door to Annie's hotel room, his heart racing with anticipation. When she opened the door, dressed in a silk robe that clung to her body, his breath caught in his throat. Honey, he whispered, stepping inside. His eyes devoured her, hunger clear on his face. Relax, Tade, she purred. Running a hand down his chest, you seem tense. Tade swallowed hard. He had been thinking about her all day, about the way her body had felt in his hands as he helped her last night, how mysterious she had seemed. He didn't know what it was about her, but she had captivated him entirely. They shared an intimate moment, his hands trembling as he reached for her. But as their closeness intensified, something dark flashed in Annie's eyes. She smiled, a smile that made his blood run cold. Her necklace, a delicate piece that had been resting on her chest, suddenly began to shift. Tade blinked in confusion, watching in horror as the necklace glittered like a living thing, growing longer and thicker. Before he could react, it transformed into a massive snake. The creature coiled itself around him, its scales glistening in the dim light, its eyes locked onto his, filled with malice. Tolani! Tade stammered, finally realizing who she was. The snake's mouth opened wide, its fangs gleaming. It struck him in the neck, sinking its teeth deep into his skin. A burning pain shot through his body and he screamed, but the sound was cut short as his limbs went numb. You remember me now, don't you? Tolani's voice echoed in his head as the venom coursed through his veins. You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you. Tade's body convulsed, his mouth opening and closing in silent agony as paralysis took hold of him. The last thing he saw before his vision faded was Tolani's smile, her lips twisted in a triumphant smile. Back at Bayo's home, he was picking Tola for their date. The babysitter cancelled, Bayo explained as he opened the door for her, an apologetic smile on his face. So I couldn't leave Vivian alone. I hope that's alright. Tola smiled as she got into the car. It's fine, Bayo. Besides, Vivian is wonderful company. Vivian sat in the back seat, grinning from ear to ear. We're all going on a date together, she declared proudly. Bayo and Tola shared a laugh, the tension between them easing as they drove into the night, unaware of the gruesome fate that had just befallen Tade. Meanwhile, at the hotel, the authorities were stumped. Tade's lifeless body was discovered in the room, his face frozen in terror. But the CCTV footage showed nothing out of the ordinary, just Tade entering the room alone and never leaving. Oluchi's wife was devastated, and no amount of investigation could explain the bizarre incident. Bayo returned home with Vivian after dropping Tola off at her place. His mind was still racing from the events of the day, but Vivian's sleepy weight in his arms was a small comfort. She stirred slightly as he carried her inside, her tiny arms draping around his neck. He laid her gently in her bed, brushing a stray coil from her forehead before quietly leaving the room. As he settled into his own bed, the exhaustion of the day pulled him under quickly, but peace was fleeting. In his dream, he was a boy again, back in the forest, the same forest where he had left Tolani all those years. The air was thick, humid, and oppressive. The sounds of the forest echoed in his ears, louder than they should have been. Branches creaking, leaves rustling, and a low east slithering through the trees. Bayo's younger self ran, his small legs pumping through the underbrush. But they, Tade, Kunle were ahead, their faces twisted in fear. Behind them, a massive snake slid through the tall grass, its scales shimmering in the dim light. Its body was impossibly long, coiling and uncoiling with terrifying speed as it closed in on them. Run faster, but they shouted, his voice high-pitched and desperate. Bayo's heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in ragged gaps. He stomped over a root, nearly falling, but forced himself to keep moving. The snake eyes glowed in the darkness, its forked tongue flickering out as it hissed again, the sound like a death knell in Bayo's ears. Suddenly, Kunle exclaimed as the snake launched at him, sinking its fangs into his leg. He thrashed, his hands clawing at the air as the venom spread through his veins. Bayo wanted to help, but fear rooted him to the spot. He could only watch as the snake dragged Kunle's lifeless body into the shadows, its eyes locking onto Bayo's. The snake gaze pierced him, and in that moment, Bayo knew it wasn't just an animal. It was something more, something ancient, something vengeful. Tolani, he whispered in his dream, his voice trembling. The snake reeled back, preparing to strike. Bayo screamed. He woke up with a jolt, his body drenched in sweat. His heart was pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. Without thinking, he threw off the covers and dropped to his knees beside the bed. His hands clasped together in desperate prayer. God, please, I don't know what's happening, but protect me. Protect Vivian. Forgive me for what happened to Tolani, please. I never wanted this. His voice cracked, his words coming out in choked sobs as the guilt of the past weighed heavily on him. Please help me. The next morning, the news hit him like a punch to his gut. Kunle was dead, choked on venomous poison in his own home. They said his new mate was nowhere to be found. Bayo stared at the TV, his mind struggling to process the information. His hands trembled as he turned the volume up. The news anchor's voice was calm, almost too calm for the horror being described. Kunle Adewale, 35, was found dead in his apartment this morning. Sources say that the cause of death appears to be a venomous substance, but authorities are still investigating. His maid, who was reportedly hired only last week, is currently missing and is being sought for questioning. Bayo's blood ran cold. He knew it wasn't just a random maid. It was her, Tolani, back for revenge. The next day was a Saturday, and Bayo wasted no time in going to his pastor. He arrived early at the church, his heart heavy, as he sat in the small office. The pastor, a calm and understanding man in his late 50s, sat across from him, his hands folded in his lap as he listened. "I've been having these nightmares," Bayo began, his voice hoarse. "They're about something that happened when I was younger, something terrible." The pastor nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I was there when Tolani died. We didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. I didn't stop them, and now I think she's coming for us. Kule is dead, and I don't think it's over," Bayo's voice cracked. With emotions as he relayed the dreams, the memories, the overwhelming guilt, the pastor sat in silence for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "The past has a way of catching up with us, Bayo," he said finally, "especially when it's not been laid to rest properly. Tolani's spirit may be seeking revenge, but I believe there's still hope for you." "What do I do?" Bayo asked, desperation clear in his voice. "I want you to fast," the pastor said. "Pray deeply. The past is closer to you than you know, but God is always closer. Seek his forgiveness and protection, and I will pray for you as well." That weekend, Tolani had a dream of the past. For the first time in years, she saw the faces of the boys clearly. Bode, Kunle, Tade, and Bayo. She woke up with a start, her heart pounding as the realization hit her like a tidal wave. Bayo, the man she had fallen in love with, the one who had taken her heart, he was one of them. The next evening, Tola arrived at Bayo's home. He was surprised to see her standing at his door. "Tola, what are you doing here?" he asked, puzzled. I saw your address on Vivian's file at school," she explained, her eyes darting around nervously. Something about her seemed off. Bayo frowned. "Are you okay?" Tola stepped inside, her movements slow and deliberate. There was a strange tension in the air, something Bayo couldn't quite place. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice was distant. Vivian suddenly appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, why does Auntie Tola have fangs?" Bayo's heart stopped. His eyes widened as he looked at Tola. "No, not Tola, Tolani." Her form shifted before his eyes, her human skin giving way to shimmering scales, her eyes glowing like the serpent in his dreams. "Tolani," Bayo's voice was barely a whisper. "I've waited for this," Tolani said, her voice trembling with emotion. "For years I've waited to take my revenge, but now that I'm here, I don't know if I can." Bayo dropped to his knees, his voice shaking. "Please, Tolani, I was never part of it. I didn't want to hurt you. I spent my whole life running from it, from them. I swear, I'm not like them." Tears welled up in Tolani's eyes as she shifted between her human and snake forms, her voice crackling with pain. "I was given a second chance by the goddess of snakes to take my revenge, but I can't do this anymore." She looked at Bayo, then at Vivian, who was watching with wild, innocent eyes. "I wish you both happiness," Tolani whispered, her voice soft and broken. She shifted fully into her serpent form, her long body gliding across the floor as she slithered towards the door. Bayo watched in stunned silence as she disappeared into the night, her form melting into the darkness. A heavy stillness settled over the house. For the first time in years, Bayo felt a sense of peace. The nightmare was over, or was it? Hey besties! Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your support. I don't take it for granted. If you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Please subscribe already. On this channel, I currently have a membership program going on, and it's just for a little fee. You get exclusive perks that not just anybody gets. You get to tell me the kind of stories, titles, topics you want to see, and I take them as priority. You also get to be the first person to see my new uploads before any other person, and sneak peeks of my behind the scenes projects. So anytime you're waiting for a new video and I haven't uploaded, just check out my other videos. I'm sure you'll find something you like. And as always, I'll see you in my next video. Bye besties! Mwah.